Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of the Humble Pursuit podcast. This is actually season 2. My name is Bill. I'm joined with Tyler, my good friend, and Thomas, my other good friend. Hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Oh, man. I'm confused now because you introduced me as Thomas, but that's all right. I'll get through it.
You'll get through it?
I've been insulted worse, but
Yes, you have.
barely.
By me, probably. Probably. Maybe even today.
Season 2, eh?
Well, it's either season 2 or episode 16. It's season 2,
Because
episode
if
1.
it was season 2, it would be episode 1.
Well, we've been here for a year. So I could redo the intro and say, hey, welcome to... No, I'm not
I think we should just keep going.
We're just going to keep going. My phone is ringing as we speak. It's kind of vibrating in a nice spot. So how's everybody been? We haven't had a lot of communication lately. A lot of life's been going on. What's up, gentlemen?
Yeah, this studio served as my quarantine spot for a week, so I got to hang out here, sans family, sans friends, for a week. So that was fun. I got COVID.
You had sand and family?
I had it.
Did you properly disinfect before we came in?
Right?
I should have checked that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Okay,
good.
good.
Good. Excellent.
So you're healthy. You're
COVID.
feeling better. You're good.
I'm Rona free. Yeah, it was quite the experience because I'm vaccinated. So when I got a little cold, I thought nothing of it. Continued to head to Colorado where we had planned to hike some 14ers, some 14,000 foot peaks, and I really was challenging myself because I was feeling sicker and sicker and started having a fever. But I realized I need to be prepared to be able to hike mountains when I'm sick. And so I just pushed through it. And it wasn't pretty because it was about 5 steps, wait 5 minutes, 5 steps up, wait 5 minutes, because I just could not breathe. And come to find out, it wasn't just the altitude I was fighting, but COVID was trying to suffocate me as well. But we did climb the mountains. It was really great. But that meant I couldn't fly home. So I rented a car, came back here.
Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Get up that mountain. That's awesome.
It definitely was.
Not an awesome that you had a virus infecting you and attacking you, but that you embraced the suck and got up the mountains. How many did you climb?
So we did what's called the Decalibron loop. It's 4 14ers, all in one loop. I got up one. I saw that my pace was really keeping us back, so I encouraged my buddies to keep going up Mount Lincoln while I made progress to Mount Sherman, and then we reunited at Mount Democrat. So I got 3, they got 4.
Nice. How many guys are doing this with you?
So it was just 2 guys that did the hikes. It was Scott from here in town and a college buddy who lives out in Denver. We met up to just go do some training hikes.
Excellent. Thomas, what's been going on with you?
I got to baptize my sons this weekend.
Dude, that is awesome.
That was kind of a big deal to me.
I need the video of you leaking awesomeness from your eye holes.
I'm just glad I didn't
have to do it.
I'm glad I didn't have to talk, because if I would have had to talk, it wouldn't have gone very well. But yeah, they're 11, so it was fun because it was kind of their decision. It wasn't us forcing them to do it. And it was just a neat Sunday because there was 10 total kids that had decided of different ages, and just a different vibe on Sunday. It wasn't just church. I mean, it was a different day.
Nice.
So it was so that's been good, and it was also the boys' birthday on Sunday, so it's one that we won't forget.
Awesome.
So that was a good weekend.
That's
And
pretty.
you had surgery.
I had carpal tunnel surgery, the most manly surgery that you can have. I was out wrestling bears, and I hurt my hand. But no, it was overdue, but it was a great experience. I mean, as great as surgery can be. I didn't get put out. They just gave me a local, and probably the coolest thing was that I know the doctor, not know him, but I know him. We've talked about woodworking before, and so we had some good conversations. And then when the surgery is done, he's like, "Hey, do you want to see how the inside of your hand works while we're still open?" I'm like, heck yes, I do want to see how my hand works. I don't think that's for everybody, but it was pretty awesome. I ended up being an hour and a half late to work and haven't missed any work. I think that that's probably a mistake.
It's,
Yeah.
it's a mistake.
It
You're
probably
right.
is.
You're right.
You are probably 100%
If you
correct.
you liked the surgery so much, you'll get to have it twice.
I will go back and have it on my other hand probably in a year or two. I'm gonna wait.
But you did follow my principle of anytime in your life when you get a chance to see the inside of your own body, you should
you
take
take
advantage.
it. Absolutely.
That's kind of a
Absolutely, you
principle
take
I've
Yes.
and I also applied that to my wife when she had the kids, and whether she gave me permission or not is irrelevant. But I wanted to. I mean, how often are you going to see inside of somebody else?
Tell me
I
she
want
had
to
a
see that.
C-section.
She did. Yeah.
That was good
And
because
so I thought,
my mind went in a whole different place, and I'm
well,
like,
of course
Thomas,
it
this is a PG podcast.
I mean, if you get a chance to see that, you should see it. That's
Absolutely.
my opinion. So
Okay.
Absolutely. So we're just doing kind of a grab bag discussion today, and one of the things that I've been hearing all over the news is the word crisis. So that got me thinking. We have crisis this, crisis that. There's a crisis because of a lack of vaccine or the vaccinated. There's a crisis because of masks. There's a crisis because of the COVID. There's a crisis because of the war in Afghanistan. There's a crisis because of the end of the war in Afghanistan. There's a crisis because of the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. The word crisis is thrown around a lot, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to just discuss what we've learned personally about going through crisis in our own lives, in the lives of our families, and maybe take that from personal to familial. Would that be the correct word?
no, I don't think so.
Probably
No,
not.
But I know what you
to
mean.
our
It's a
family,
relationship, yeah.
community, and then how do we also handle crisis as how do we confront crisis on the national level, where our control is obviously diminished. Did you see that they used the word diminished
And it was in the right
in
context.
the right
too.
context and everything?
Well, I think we should start with Tyler. He was probably in the last crisis of any of us, right? Would you consider that a crisis? Maybe it wasn't a crisis.
Thankfully, I had people around me who considered it a crisis because I was out of it. I had COVID brain. I mean, I wasn't thinking clearly. And so it's one lesson would be have people around you if you're going to go through a crisis that can help. And so I think one thing that's helped me when we talk about crisis, and I've drawn this for Thomas before, is this concept of what you can control. And so when crisis comes up, I think it's really important for us to understand what's within our control. And so YouTube viewers can see this, but if you draw a small circle and then another circle around it and then a third circle, in the middle is the things that you can control. And then in the second one is things you can influence. And the other ones are, I think the term might be monitor or observe. The things that are within your control are pretty small. I mean, it's like what you're going to wear today, how fast you're going to drive, what your kids are going to wear, you can't really even control. If you're going to get in an accident, you can influence the way you drive, but you can't control how everybody else is. And then everything beyond that, like the weather, somewhat politics, is things that you really just can monitor, observe, but you really have no influence on. And so I think in crisis, it's really important to understand what is within your control. And so when I've personally gone through my own family crisis or my own personal crisis, that is something that really helped me come to peace with there's little I am in control of. How I think, what I believe, my own reaction to things, those are within my control. And the other ones, you just have to lay down and not take such responsibility for it, because that's when you get the anxiety that comes with, you get the primary crisis and then the crisis of the response that happens when we respond poorly to crisis. And so I don't know if that concept makes sense, but for me, it gives me freedom to let go of some of the stuff that I can't control.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when you drew that for me the first time, going through some different things, and it did help because it helps you to, for me, it was kind of a perspective thing. It kind of puts you, what you are capable of doing, it kind of identifies that. And then it helps you identify the things that you're not. My problem with it is my whole comfort zone is inside the small circle. So I totally makes sense. And it did help me prioritize what I needed to do. But I have a really difficult time with admitting or accepting the fact that it doesn't matter how hard I work at this, I'm not going to change the outcome.
And I think that there's a cost to that. It's been brought to my attention by my wonderful wife. Some of the costs of trying to control things that are outside your control. There's been research that's shown that especially social workers and people in the helping industry, people who give a lot and really try to solve people's problems, they have a higher rate of autoimmune diseases, lupus, the stuff that when the body starts attacking itself, when you aren't taking care of yourself enough, and you're taking care of everybody else and trying to influence, you can actually make yourself sick. You're more likely to. And so if we think we can draw that control circle really big, it ends up taking a toll on our bodies.
Well, I know for me, as I look at that and look at my colorful history, I guess the biggest thing that I've learned from going through crisis is bring friends. Because the first major crisis I went through, I did not bring friends. I decided to isolate. I hid away in a little bitty town of about 200 people after I was basically, became a half-time dad instead of a full-time dad as I viewed it at the time, and went through a divorce. And so, I chose to react by trying to control everything, controlling nothing. And I found that when I isolated, if I drank enough or did enough drugs, that I could forget about that control for a while, and I could forget about it. And that became an automatic response, which led down a 3-year slippery slope. So, that is not how one should respond to crisis in their lives. And, we've talked about some things, Thomas, because of our experience with near death, we react different to some things. Because of my going through crisis that way, I react different through things now. So, number one, when I go through crisis, the first thing I do is grab friends, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but I'll grab my friends before I grab my wife, because she works at night and sometimes she still needs to sleep. But, grab friends immediately. Get people in your corner. Get those voices of reason with you. And then, find that sphere of influence. Sphere, that's another thing.
Yeah. So we've kind of addressed how personally, right?
Yeah.
Understand your control. Bring people along. What about family? Like when your family is going through crisis, it's probably similar stuff. Would you change any of your tactics if your loved one was sick or your parents are, passing? How maybe it's a similar strategy.
I think family in crisis. And, I'm going to use an example. I was up we live about, 120 miles from Kansas City.
Sure.
So I was up in Kansas City, and a guy that I consider a dear brother of mine, while I'm up in Kansas City, he lives in Wichita area, and his father died. And the response to that crisis was, I need to go be with my brother right now. And Kansas City, Salina, and El Dorado, Kansas do not line up. There's not a direct route. I mean, it was sacrifice. And, that's what I did is I went down there, and I didn't go down there with the objective of solving something. I didn't go down there with the objective of helping him feel better. I went there with the objective of, I want to sit with you. And that is it. And there isn't no words. There isn't no words. That's
Well,
the proper English.
And that's what I've learned. Elaine's taught me that over the past 13 years. is just showing up,
Absolutely.
that you don't have to fix it. So, I mean, obviously, me and my wife and being family, when she's had those things, I've been able to transition from, we're going to sit down and get this fixed,
Solver.
which didn't always go well. But that's where I was at for a long time. But now being able to do what you're saying is just to say, I hear you, I see you, and I'm just here in the trench with you with whatever comes. And I don't think, whether it's family, whether it's personal, anything you're dealing with, when you know you've got those people beside you, it changes the way you feel. I mean, it changes the way you perceive the crisis.
Absolutely.
And we definitely lean into that. I think as husbands, you see so many newlyweds where the husbands have to figure out, my wife just wants me to listen, and then don't solve, right? And that's true in friendships, and we talk about community. I think we're talking about friends and brothers and sisters, not necessarily your city, but just showing up. Like, Billy, you've taught me, be in the trenches, side by side with guys. And I've always wanted to either be out in front leading and showing them the way, or behind pushing them to the right solution. But you can't walk with somebody if you're in front of them or behind them. You really, if you want them to lean on you, you have to be there, present, like you're saying I see you, empathizing. And they're more likely to come up with a creative solution when someone is there with them, empathizing. They can relax and come up with better solutions than we can throw at them, probably, from the outside, because they know the situation probably.
So going back, because I was just thinking about this as you were talking.
You weren't listening to me when I was talking?
No. No. I kind of treat you like my wife. I'm just tuning you out. No, I was listening, but the thought came into my mind: what stops us in crisis in ourselves from reaching out? What stops us?
I'd like to know, because that's one of my biggest problems.
Yeah.
I tend to take it inside and just be like, this is something I can deal with, because I know you guys are dealing with other things. And I tend to look at it like, whatever I'm struggling with is rarely worse than what anybody else is struggling with. I'm not saying this is the right way to think. I'm just saying this is what I go
Absolutely
through.
not.
And then to think, well, if this is something that I can handle or I can deal with, and I don't need to add to other people. And that's just part of, and I've gotten better about that, but that's something that I've always thought through myself, is to think, if the problems I have aren't, I don't want to say significant, but they're not worse than other people's problems, so I don't need to present it. I mean, that's part of my answer to that question.
No, I mean, how we process is how we process. I think one thing for me, and the reasons I wouldn't reach out to people, was pride and ego. Going through the divorce, going through the split custody, it was an ego and a pride issue. And for me, I'd like to say that I'm over that, but I still suffer from it. So it's okay. We talked about comfort zone. This is going to be uncomfortable. I need to reach out. And sometimes for me, it's such an automatic response now that, man, Thomas, I don't want it to get to the point, because I will take it and I will chew on it until it becomes a problem. Because I've seen me do it. Mm-hmm. I know that I have that capability. 5 syllables. I know that I have that capability. So even if I reach out and just say, hey guys, this just happened. My grandpa died. You want to know who the first 2 people to know that my grandpa died were? They're sitting at this table. The next 5 are guys that come here on man time. Mm-hmm. Wasn't in crisis yet. Mm-hmm. I was going to get there. I needed some brothers beside me. I needed, I'm going to have to process through this. I'm going to have to go. My grandpa died. Boom. I got the brothers on board even before the crisis hit me. They're checking on me. They're just, Tyler was really good about checking on me. And just, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay today? No sage words of wisdom, no huge advice. Just say, hey, I'm here. And that's exactly what you were talking about. Just, I'm here. I see you. I'm going to walk with you.
You did that recently to me, Billy. I called you and I just started just telling you this story. The dynamics were so complicated, and I'm sure you weren't able to follow it because it was still so fresh for me too. And he said something like, "Wow, that must be really intense because, like, I can't." You
couldn't process it. I said, I can't process
so
it.
that must be overwhelming for you because you're experiencing it, and I'm just hearing it, and he's like clearly admitting this isn't making sense, but it still felt so good to be able to share it with you, and get it off my chest. So I think, Thomas, you asked like why don't we? I think it wasn't modeled for me growing up, right? Vulnerability, it's not modeled. I think the other is because when it was done, we have this fix it, solve it, mentality. A lot of people, and I don't necessarily want to share and get all this advice that I'm going to have to not do because I probably know what I need to do. And so I think if you get the people around you who are just going to show up and aren't going to try to fix it for you, I think we might be more willing to be open if the responses start to be a little bit more richer.
And it's hard too when you've got like the situation you were explaining to Bill on the phone. You don't always have time to give everybody the entire context of everything that's going on around that. So you just say, I'm fine. Because you're like, I don't have 45 minutes to explain to you everything that I've been struggling with that's led to this. And so I think that's another barrier to that. But then
absolutely,
the next thought, that takes me to then, so what's the correct response? What's the correct response when you get a phone call? Or somebody says, hey, I'm really in a valley, I'm really struggling. What is the best? I'm not a fan of the "I'll pray for you" thing.
You go,
I'll just say that out loud.
Pray for you.
And so not saying that's not an effective way to help somebody. I'm just saying that becomes very shallow and not meaningful. So how do you communicate to somebody else that you are with them in this, if it's via text or if it's on the phone?
Well, number one, I dislike text because it voids the emotion out of it, or it allows the other person to impute the emotion into it, whichever one. So I try to avoid that. I don't know that I got the correct response, but I want to talk to you personally. And I've had guys, I was just trying to think of sometimes, there was a time where I went through a small, what I viewed as a giant financial crisis, and it wasn't that big of a financial crisis. And I reached out. It hurt my pride to reach out. And a brother of mine who's sitting at the table on my right said, hey, come, let's talk about it. And we went and talked about it. What's the problem? What's the outcome? What's the solution? And we just sat there and talked about it and got it figured out. And that's the I care. The I care. That's huge.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It probably depends on what the crisis is. If it's one that can be solved, if it's an emotional, if it's a physical thing. I think one would just be to have that conversation. And then do something thoughtful. Like you said, just showing that you care. They may be having a family member who's sick and you bring the meal. Obviously, you're not making the family member better, but they're not feeling alone, right? So continuing to stay in touch. I think just helping them process. Typically, when you're in a crisis, right, you're feeling a lot, but you may not be thinking clearly. And so helping someone identify they call them cognitive distortions, thought patterns that are wrong, like all or nothing thinking, magnification, great ways to just think poorly, minimizing the good and maximizing the bad. Helping people talk through that stuff, I think, helps them get out of the emotion, get back to the thinking part of their brain. So just helping them, and that's what empathy does. It allows them to move back to a more rational way of processing stuff.
And a lot of times I found, and this goes back to I got to give Tyler credit because his little bullseye map, I was thinking about some people that I've visited with, And a lot of time, what's eating them is what's out of their control. And shifting their focus back onto what they can control.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
What's on your side of the street?
what's
That's what
on
you
your
said.
side of the street, what you
Yep.
can control, and,
Well,
and
and that-
keeping that at the forefront.
I shared with you guys a conversation I'd had here this summer with a friend of mine who was, suicidal. And I remember that conversation because the first thing I remembered thinking was, why is he talking to me like this? But he was. And so we're on the phone, and I remember it was just that, what's one thing that you know you can do? That's what I told him. So take one problem or one situation that you know that you can act on, and act on that. And then the whole conversation went along take one step. Once you've taken that step, you can see that, hey, you got your car fixed. That's one step. It's not a huge step, but it's, and then what's the next thing you know that you can do? And then continue to work through those things he was just seeing the entire picture right in his face all at once. And he was so overwhelmed, he couldn't process it. He couldn't control everything that was going on. And so when you said that, it made me think about that conversation that we just together kind of came to that conclusion that it's just one step at a time. Literally 1 hour, 1 minute, whatever it might be, get one thing done that you know you can do, and identify those areas of control.
Let's talk national.
Every step's a victory. So let's talk national or global. We could go global.
This is the topic I want to talk about because
Okay.
I feel like
Let's talk
I'm
about
awesome at it.
it. Don't try to hold
I'm
my
just-
hand while
I
we're
just
talking
wanna
about. That's awkward.
Brag because I was so bad at it. I think we're living in Washington D.C., working on Capitol Hill, that you're consumed with the national crisis, right? Whatever's on CNN or Fox News is what you're going to be dealing with that day because that's what the constituents are calling about. That's what people are going to be talking about on the floor of the Senate or the House. And I think that this problem that we're talking about, that we think that so much is within our control in our personal lives, but it's not. We can maybe influence it, and maybe we're just a participant in it. That's manifested on the national stage. So everybody spends so much time talking about and worrying about things that are issues that are important, but they spend the time on the outer ring stuff. So if you care about abortion, yeah, you have a role to play. You can vote one way, but at that point, that's really your influence on the national stage. Maybe some fundraising, but really if you care about teenage moms, unwanted pregnancies, and you want to have some influence, why don't you go adopt? Why don't you go provide care to these moms? There's things that are inside your control that you can do, but we spend so much of our time and energy on the stuff that's outside. The issues are worthy, but let's spend the time focusing on what's within our control. And so, get back to like the anxiety. I think that a lot of people, especially who have time to watch the news, read the news, the more they spend on caring about those issues and only thinking about and worrying about them and talking about them with their friends, it's not good for their health. It's not good for relationships. It causes broken relationships. And so I think we need to apply what we are talking about in our personal relationships to national issues as well, in terms of the amount of time and fixation and what we actually spend our time doing.
Well, and that goes, we've talked about social media before too, but that, when you were talking about that larger sphere, it's easy to get on your phone and join in the echo chamber of things that I already agree with and just get that reinforced. You're not accomplishing anything. You're not changing anybody's life by bitching about it on Twitter, or getting involved at that level. But you are changing people's lives when you commit to people here, inside that circle. The difference to me is there's less commitment. If I log into Twitter or Facebook and I complain about abortion, I don't have to commit to anything. I don't have to be responsible for what I've really said. I can just spend my energy in that way. No one's being benefited from that. But if I take that energy and that time and go find, like you said, go find causes or people that you can go impact their lives on, that requires commitment. I think I am showing up for you. I'm making a commitment to you. And I think people are less prone to do that because now I'm stepping out and having to commit myself to something.
I would much rather just complain on social media and get a bunch of people to stand beside me and agree with me.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's a great point. You know, that's an excellent point, that where can you have an impact? And your impact is not going to be impeach this president, impeach that president, kick this person out, do that. I mean, it's just constant barrage.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, look at the last 2 weeks. I mean, I have people in my life, very close in my life. They could tell you the ICU statistics in foreign countries of COVID. They could tell you how many cases there are in Ford County, Kansas. These things that have no impact on their life, but here I could spend my time on that. Sure, I mean it's available, but like you were out here sitting here by yourself. It's like maybe I should call Tyler instead of doing that and see if he needs groceries. You know, I mean it's just small adjustments to say.
Yeah.
Here's somebody suffering from the same crisis, so to speak, but somebody who's within my reach.
Right.
You know,
Man, I feel like I got the privilege of working for a member of Congress who modeled this. You know, I think because we do what we're talking about, we do social media. We just want to like throw stuff out there. We elect members of Congress who are doing that as well, or spending their time and their platform to, you know, regurgitate all of the stuff that's going on inside us. But we don't elect members who care about like the real local issues, the boring stuff. That we want them to go talk about the national topics. And when I worked for a member who spent a lot less time talking about gun rights and gay marriage and more about the reimbursement rate for veterans to get to hospitals in rural America, it's like he was actually able to do something about that, because you can move the ball on that. You're not going to move the ball very far over here. And why don't we care about, like you said, go and get groceries, the things that we can actually have an impact on? So I don't know what that means, because we live in a democracy and so we're supposed to use it, but I think it's just appropriate. Understanding the impact we can have, stewarding our vote, our voice, but then also our hands and feet over here.
I think that's the big part, is the hands and feet. You know, instead of going out there and just trying to raise a ruckus, see what you can do.
Which is funny because, you know, being on social media and talking a lot is the way you help people locally, right? Like that's actually what we should be doing. Spend less time talking about national issues and checking in with people. So stay on your phone, just do the right thing with it, or go visit somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, well, right now we can talk about the withdrawal of Afghanistan, our U.S. troops in Afghanistan, or you can reach out to a veteran friend of yours and see how he's doing. Which one is going to have an impact?
Mm-hmm. Not to be confused with not caring about it. You know, I mean, I still think you would. I think we could all agree that we care about the people who got left or are in Afghanistan. We care about the people who have COVID. It's not that you don't care. It's just that, are you going to spend your energy on just that, like I said, that social media platform, or are you going to spend that energy on what are some things that I can do about this within the people that I know?
Real life impact.
Here's where I'm bad at it. I can't influence weather, but I spend a lot of time. Weather.com, Weather Underground, AccuWeather, checking it, when I really should be making sure my gutters and downspouts are ready for that rain. So yeah, spend more time mitigating, understanding what's going on in those situations and responding rather than wasting our breath. Man, but I love the NOAA radar app. I'm sorry. It's my farmer's coming out.
It's that dopamine in your brain. It's like,
I'm just hoping.
Weather. Dirt.
It's like, they just, what % chance rate? Sorry, we're going through a little bit of a drought on our farm right here.
I parked one of my vehicles in a crack so that it could.
It is a little dry out here at the
dry.
Agronomic Research Center.
At the whatever he said, big word. All right, is that our stopping point? Did we accomplish anything today? What did we accomplish? If we had to summarize what we talked about, What did we talk about?
I think everybody, I don't care who
Everybody.
is listening, all 6 or 7 people, everybody is being affected by a crisis right now.
Absolutely.
For the last 18 months, every person on earth, how many times could you say that, are experiencing crisis at some level. So that, to me, I mean, that's the point, is to, find your circle, identify where that is, and find out what you can do to help people and reach out to people instead of polarizing each other, instead of separating people into groups. It's just we're all dealing with a crisis and coming together and identifying that circle and reaching out to people that are within your sphere.
Don't solve their problems unless they invite you to. Just be present. I think that's good advice too, that I'm going to take. Just show up. You don't have to know what to say. Just call.
And I would say reach out. Reach out if you're going through crisis, if you're having feelings, reach out to somebody. And they're not going to solve your problems, but bring them down in the trenches with you and let them walk through it with you. Even if it's not something that's eating your lunch today, it's not going to say it's not going to eat your lunch tomorrow. So, anyway, I think that's about all we got for today.
Yep. How many bags of beef jerky have we had?
I am still a failure.
Agreed.
And
No, here's me as a failure. Twice I've taken the bags of beef jerky to monumental places to take pictures, and they've stayed in my bag, or I've eaten the beef jerky before I got there. So on top of the mountains, I was going to take a picture, and at the Acropolis in Greece, and both times. That's my fail. I'm sorry, guys. Bo, Luke.
Bo and Luke, I'm going to have to take a bag out to Canopolis instead of the Acropolis and get up
Wherever your Opolis is.
Wherever
take
your
it.
Opolis
Take it.
is, take your bag. But we do love us some beef jerky, and especially from the Primal Jerky. Devin and Bo are awesome guys. We had them on the podcast. It's made right here in Kansas. They make it in small batches so they can control the taste. We are currently at 87 bags and holding for like a month.
Yeah, it's time to change that.
It's time to change that up, and so I'll hit Bo up, or also I'll hit Jenny's liquor up before I come next time. But they have a bunch of flavors. They have Facebook page is at Primal Jerky, or their website is www.feedonprimal. We have an internet presence. We have Facebook. If you're listening to this, you might have already found the Facebook, but it's at the Humble Pursuit Podcast. We have a YouTube page. Still don't know what it's called. I presume it's called about the same. We got a Twitter page, but I don't tweet very good. I do have the one and only Humble Pursuit Podcast shirt. I need to make you guys one of those, because every time I go out into public with it, somebody will ask, hey, what's that podcast about? Went to the races this weekend with my daughter on a father-daughter date, and she was like, hey, somebody at the gate was like, hey, what's that podcast about? And do you know the guys who do it? And I'm like, yeah, they're jerks, but it's a pretty good podcast.
Yeah, I know them, and I won't make them a shirt.
And I won't make them a shirt about it. But so, yeah, hit like, subscribe, share, tell people about it. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another podcast. Don't know if we'll have a guest. Don't know if we'll be topical. We're all reading a book currently called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And interesting read.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting read. We might discuss that, because I think that's a noble topic, and find out that boredom is a good thing for us.
Discomfort is good.
Discomfort is good. I'm not.
Failing is good.
Oh, no.
No?
I haven't. I must not have read that chapter yet. So, anyway, in closing up, I just want you all to remember, never settle, never give up, live life with urgency, to the fullest and in abundance, face your legacy every day. And remember, everyone, the only day guaranteed is yesterday. For Thomas, Tyler, and myself, God bless. We're out.